We are live from Auckland Park in Johannesburg. Good to see you, Brother Mzwai. We're going to chat to him in a short while. You're ready to engage with you on matters that affect you, matters that affect your family, matters that affect your community. Tonight, the African Peace Mission, as well as youth unemployment, both topical. A very good evening to you, South Africa, those watching around the world. My name is Blaine Herman, and this is It's Topical. We're also live on SABC Plus, our digital audience with us tonight. There they are. Good to see them. Good to have them on the program. We're going to get their take in a short while. The African Peace Initiative mission to Ukraine and the Russian Federation on our radar tonight, aimed at a peaceful resolution of the Russia-Ukraine war. But while we were celebrating Youth Day in South Africa, there was drama in Poland. Security researcher with the Institute for Security Studies, Dennis Riva, says he doesn't believe that South Africa's neutral stance on Russia's invasion of Ukraine could be linked to South African journalists' inability to participate in the African Peace Mission. Reportedly, Poland said that the plane carrying around 120 South Africans, including journalists, police, security, for President Cyril Ramaphosa, had what it called dangerous goods on board. Riva says he doesn't believe it was politically motivated, as some reports suggest. What do you think? We live in an interconnected world, so these issues are really important to discuss. We will discuss. But at the same time, South Africans are dealing with a lot, right? Especially the youth. Deputy President Paul Mashatile said the youth of 1976 fought for their political freedom. Now we must fight for our economic freedom. Thus, the theme for this year is accelerating youth emancipation for a sustainable future. What does it mean in practical terms? How can we achieve economic emancipation? What measures needs to be in place in order to ensure sustainable future? We will discuss, which leads us to our question of the week. And we're asking you, have the powers that be done justice to the South African youth concerning the issue of job creation, job opportunities, curbing the unemployment rate? Let us know at It's Topical SABC. Come follow me. Let's get you some context as always. What about the issue of the private sector joining forces with government in order to provide or create a conducive environment so that you have creation of jobs, etc.? We will discuss this at It's Topical SABC. Perspective coming up. We need to start off with that story that's been hogging the headlines. President Cyril Ramaphosa says that the proposals presented to both Ukraine President Volodymyr Zelensky and Russian President Vladimir Putin by the African leaders created a foundation for future engagements that will contribute to the resolution of the conflict. He has today concluded, as you know, a working visit to both countries where African leaders proposed a path for peace to end the 16-month-long conflict between the two countries. But who could forget the experience of the South African journalists and the presidential security officers who were denied admission into Poland for more than 24 hours? This weekend's activities during this excursion are summarized in this brief clip. Take a look.
The aircraft transporting over 100 security personnel with heavy gunfire was prevented from entering Poland without original permits for their weapons. The head of the Presidential Protection Unit says they're being sabotaged by the Polish government.
It has never happened that we have stood opposite anyone with a diplomatic passport.
President Ramaphosa arrived early via train into the Ukrainian capital, and it did not take long for him to be met by the soundtrack, which is becoming all too familiar for that city.
The quest for peace, in our view, is an important one. And the launching of the missiles today, in our view, does not deter us.
Russia is blocking all the possible initiatives. We already had this in the past. Once again, we had the situation with the Minsk. We're not going to restart this story once again.
The delegation of African leaders is in St. Petersburg for talks with the Russian President Vladimir Putin.
A number of proposals that have been put forward, we believe, lay a foundation for a peace to be found. And this is precisely what we would like to explore, so that all of us together can contribute to bringing this war to an end.
They rejected that. Where are the guarantees that they will not reject any other agreements that we might make? Even in these conditions, we have never rejected the idea of negotiating with them. It wasn't us, it was the leadership of Ukraine who said they would not negotiate with us. Moreover, the acting president of Ukraine signed a decree prohibiting to negotiate with Russia. I fully understand your concerns. I sympathize with them, and we are ready to consider all of your proposals, but we have never rejected the idea of negotiations. It was Ukraine who did it.
Look, it's a story that's gained a lot of traction on social media. As you can see, a lot of people engaging in this issue. The EFF actually releasing a statement and basically saying it's pertaining to the detaining of the presidential security detail and media crew for over 24 hours. That's what they title it. And they're saying, the EFF basically calls on government not to respond to this lightly, but defend our sovereignty and dignity by recalling our ambassador to Poland and downgrading the Polish embassy in South Africa. What do you have to say with regards to this? Let us know. We're going to bring in a better mind on the program to discuss these issues, if that is even a viable way to go. I want to give you some context now. President Cyril Ramaphosa describing the African peace mission to Ukraine and Russia as impactful. Let's give you a sense of what we know and why it matters. This is with regards to what happened on June 16th. As I said, while we were experiencing or celebrating Youth Day here, there was a diplomatic row breaking out between South African and Polish governments. A South African Airways chartered plane by the South African National Defence Force with firearms was prevented from entering Poland without original permits for the weapons. Interesting indeed. What about, they tell us, 120 people, right, made up of South African presidential teams and media. They were stuck on that plane. We saw reporting there by Samkele Maseko, giving us a sense of what they were going through. President Ramaphosa's head of security, Major General Vosloorus, says the mission was to prevent the president from entering Ukraine with his security, and that they are putting the life of the president in jeopardy. As you know, Polish authorities finally granted the team permission to disembark, but only after over 20 hours. So it was a long wait. I want to bring in Mzondile Mbeche now to give us a sense of what we're talking about. Mzwai, he is our political editor, a man in the know. His team was out there. As you can see, there was a bit of an issue here. They left South Africa relatively smooth, got to around Italy, and then evetually went to Poland. But yes. Italy, they circled there for a bit. What happened? What went wrong?
Well, a very good evening to the viewers, Blaine. When they were about to approach the Italian airspace, so they had to get a clearance to be able to pass over it. So it then took some time, and then because they were near the airspace, so you can't simply just fly through without permission. So they had to circle until they got that permission. And remember, this conflict in Ukraine and Europe and EU, it's quite complicated. It's not as easy as perhaps everyone makes it out to be, because there are so many countries involved, there are so many interests, and then of course there are so many people who want to have a say one way or the other.
You would assume that that flight path was cleared well in advance, even over the Italian airspaces. What don't we know? Are we missing something here?
Clearly, you can see that there was something amiss around this whole trip, plane. I mean, the fact that, you had people who went to cover a trip or who went to accompany the president but couldn't. So that tells you something. And in fact, it was not even communicated earlier because you did not know what is it that you needed to expect. So when were they supposed to leave? How? And we know that at some point, because our teams who were traveling somehow got a bit delayed, and then you wonder, so were those things to do with things like clearance?
Right. We do know that some security personnel was detained, or not detained, but they were held up in Poland. But the president did have security with him from South Africa, correct?
Yes, I think let's just clarify that matter, Airplane. So this kind of security was I would say, additional security. You know, when the president goes to a situation like that, in fact, I will use the situation of Libya, of Ivory Coast and DRC and South Sudan at some point. So where there were conflicts and the president of South Africa had to travel there would be a massive number of security that travels with him. So in this instance, this security that we are speaking about is not necessarily the security that the president is always with. So he was with his close protectors and of course your regular security. But these ones, because he was going into a war zone situation, in the event something happened, so you needed people who were going to defend the president of South Africa.
Where's our team currently?
Well, currently they are in the air. Coming back to South Africa, yes.
Safe and sound. No, that's good. That's all we can ask for, right? We know the mission there. We couldn't report on it, what we ideally would like to, but I'm glad that the team is coming home safe. That's important. Now, with regards to what happened in Kiev, the president eventually went. The African heads of state and government, finally, they held their peace talks with the Ukrainian President Zelensky. Here's the controversial part of it now. There's reports of 2 explosions that rocked Kiev on Friday. Why is there question marks around this?
Well, the question marks around this plane emanated from when the report started coming up, and then the team that was in Poland checked with this presidential spokesperson, Vincent Magwenya, to say, we are hearing these reports from Reuters that there have been explosions. And then he was already in Ukraine. His response was that, you know, I've been here. I didn't hear anything. I did not see anything. So from what I know, so there is nothing of the sort. So, but then Reuters, who were there, said they saw it. And then, of course, we are told that the presidents were then rushed to, I don't know, you call it a bunker for the bomb, something like that. And then, of course, when the president himself, in his speech, say, even the explosions that have just happened will not deter us. So that then created confusion, because here is the presidential spokesperson who was asked a direct question to say, we have had this explosion. And then he says, no, there was nothing of the sort. And then his principal, a few hours later, he says, even if there are those bombs, will not be deterred. So that's where the confusion comes from.
Then the president eventually made his way to Russia, had chats with President Putin. This is what the president says, big takeaways. This war must be settled through negotiation and diplomatic means. It's a common refrain that we heard the president saying before. There needs to be a guarantee of security of all countries. President Putin went on to say they value the interests to settle the conflict, and they are open for constructive dialogue. What does that mean?
Well, the dialogue that will basically be agreeable to all. But right now, it's very, very difficult, because if you look at what Ukraine is saying and then what Russia is saying. In fact, when President Putin took out those agreements to say, these people, this is what they've done, they violated the agreements. And then when you hear Zelensky, basically President Zelensky saying, well, right now, so we can't talk about anything because Russia needs to get out of here. So all those issues are quite complex and complicated.
Yeah.
That's why, as much as many people perhaps are saying this trip by African heads of state may not have yielded much, but the fact that people from outside the European continent went there to meet the leaders of both countries on two consecutive days, so does tell you that the world is taking note. But remember, Blaine, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter how much they fight.
Yeah.
Somehow, they will need to sit down and sort this one out. Because military means, I don't see them settling this thing. Especially, I mean, NATO, Ukraine, which is backed by NATO. There's a number of countries with nuclear capabilities. Russia has got a nuclear capability as well. So you cannot even imagine that kind of a war, because that will be the end of humanity as we know it.
Right. Look, I guess the success will be measured whether this war is stopped or not, and what part the African leaders played will, time will tell.
Absolutely.
What about the elements that they put forward? How practical are they?
I think they actually, some of them are quite practical, because the fact of the matter is that this war is affecting everyone. Yeah. So if it continues, I mean, we've been seeing inflation everywhere go up, and then that directly affects the ordinary person in the street. So everyone gets affected by this war. So then what does that mean? It means if it continues, so these kinds of difficulties that we are seeing, I mean, when you listen to the 10-point plan of the president to say you need to look at the young, the children, for example, who are, I mean, in trouble given that this war is affecting them. And remember, children have nothing to do with this. Yeah. And then you need to look at some of these food supplies that are being disrupted. In fact, a lot more is at stake here. Yeah. It is indeed necessary that this war needs to end.
Watch the space. Our team is no doubt has eyes and ears on the ground, and we will be giving you the very latest. Good to have you, sir, on the program.
Thank you so much, Brian.
Better mind indeed. Mzondele Mbeche, our SABC News political editor. Now time to get into our main topic of the day. That's all things youth. All right, at this point, let's take a look at our regular feature. It's called the Word on the Street feature. And we took to the streets of Soweto, south of Johannesburg, to hear their views about the challenges the youth of today face. Take a look.
Our current leaders, they are not doing enough, but they're doing something. Meaning what they're doing is minimal. They have to do more for the youth. How come? That our current leaders, like for instance, when you check in National Assembly, in Parliament, the people that are there, they're elderly people. Yet the majority of people in this country is youth. So how can you explain that?
Well, we've got a very high rate of unemployment in the country, as we know, and the economy is not doing well. Not only in South Africa, but we are the hardest hit among other countries as far as development and economic growth is concerned. So, I mean, we still need a lot of investments and programs that are going to be addressed to the youth as such.
In the education system, I feel like we need more social workers, we need more psychologists for the kids to be mentally ready for the world, and for the kids not to see themselves as failures from primary, because we release learners to high school only to find that they are nowhere. They don't have support at home, so more social workers and more support system at home.
The main challenge faced with youth is employment, of which there is a possibility of them getting employed if ever the government is going to check around in the companies and recruit the youth and replace those elderly people and give them pension.
So what I can say, and pleading to the government, let them help our kids, or let them help our students, or let them help our learners to, after obtaining their degrees or after finishing the school, let them give them jobs.
We are facing challenges such as unemployment. Most of the youth, some of them are educated, they are out in the streets with their degrees, and hence they end up getting into drugs.
The youth of today is lost, if I may say so, because they don't realize the sacrifice that those people have put. And I'm saying to them, this country was fought for, and they must make sure that they educate themselves. That's one of the main things. And secondly, they must work very, very hard for them to be able to get this country to the level where it should be.
All right, that's your views. It's really important. Why? Because it helps shape the strategy of getting to better. That's what we always talk about. Let's continue our conversation. Let's bring in producer Hlela Mqoqo. She's live for us in Vosloorus, Johannesburg, to get you a sense of what the plan of action is from the people who matter the most, the future of this country. Hlela, a very good afternoon to you. What are people saying? I can hear the verpa, but I can't hear Hlela.
Good evening, Blaine, and well.
We can hear you, Hlela, loud and clear. Go on.
Good evening, Blaine, and welcome to.
All right, it seems that we're having a bit of an issue with Hlela. We'll try to come back to her in a short while we re-queue her. It is very important to understand where the issues are. What are the quick fixes? What part can government, as well as the private sector, play in order to shape or create this conducive environment to create jobs, right? We know that unemployment is sitting at, 32.9% in South Africa. When you look at youth unemployment, that number is about 46%. So where are the quick fixes? We will discuss. But let's hear from the people, as I say, who matter in this regard, the youth. Hlela is out with us. She's back with us, I understand. Hlela, tell us what's the sentiment on the ground? Very good evening to you.
Good evening, Blaine, and welcome to Vosloorus. We are here to talk about the challenges that the youth are facing on the ground on their daily basis, and trying to strive for a better life and trying to make something of themselves. But when I talk to them around here, they're telling me that there's lots of issues that they are facing. And when we read some of the researches that have been released, we see that the youth of the country is about more than a third of the population of South Africa, yet more than 60% of the youth is unemployed. We're talking about unemployment here in Vosloorus. We have youth from ages between 23 and 24, which are going to take us through the challenges that they face on a daily basis. Hello, Tabani. I'm well, thank you. Please tell me, what are the challenges that you face on a daily basis as Utabani in Vosloorus?
Challenges I face is that every day in the morning you have to wake up and you have to fight for your dream every day so that you can support your family and maintain your standard of living, be someone in your community. You see.
You told me that you were not able to go to school, to university after finishing matric. Why?
Lack of funds. You see, the population of the youth, as you said, is third of the population. So, limits of fund.
So, your problems around the area?
Yes, ma'am. My only problem is that there's a lot of there's limited opportunities for young people these days. As you can see, there's a lot of youth that is unemployed. And we always have to wake up and try to make something out of what we have, especially since we live in a community whereby you find that there's a majority of black people that are striving and only earning less money in a monthly basis. So, yeah, my personal issues is that I have to always hustle for money so that I can go and try to apply for jobs and schools and stuff. So it's not always easy, especially coming from a township. So you always have to try to look at other means of survival, like maybe selling maswiti, estradeni. Sometimes we would open corners here in our hood so that we can support our families. So yeah, that's the most public situation that we're facing currently.
Spiwe, let us compare the youth of 2023 to the youth of 1976. What is the difference between you right now and that youth of 1976?
In my knowledge, I just feel like the youth these days, we are not inspired enough because there's not much opportunities, chances, and most of the time you find that we just doing nothing, and you can try going to the library, but the library only has one PC maybe, or has like old books that will not really teach you how to maybe function in the way of today. And I just think, honestly, that's just it. It's like inspiration. There's not much of it, and there's not much time and effort put in, the youth progressing and succeeding. Yeah.
You told us that you are doing a degree.
Yeah.
What are your fears? A diploma. What are your fears after you finish your diploma?
Most definitely the fact that I might not get work. That's basically something. And remember, you're going to school, you're paying all these fees, and sometimes you're using maybe a fund, and you're going to have to pay that fund at the end of the day. So those factors affect how I look at things at the moment, whether I should add to go to get a job or decide whether I start my own business. But obviously, if I need a business, I'm going to still need funding to start that business.
Muhawu, do we see a light at the end of the tunnel?
Yes, we do have a light, but we have small chances to go through the tunnel. Yes, the light is there, but we have...
So how do you think we can reach the tunnel?
I think the government should complement us, support us as the youth, try to be with us wherever they can. We saw them, they came here, they were taking our CV on Monday. The post that they came out from our minister, Panyaza Sufi, we tried to apply it, so we are hoping that they are going to give us a good response.
Do you have hope, Umpo?
My sister, to be honest, I don't have hope. I think the only solution we will see the light. We need to change our government. That's the only way.
So does this mean you are going to be voting in the 2024 elections?
I'm definitely going to vote.
Are you going to vote in the 2024 elections?
Yes, my first time, and I will be voting next year.
And what will be your reasons for voting?
I just want to see change. I think the best thing and what everybody else wants these days is change. So if we don't choose somebody different to lead, or we don't choose a different way to lead, then there won't be change, and there's no hope for us, the youth.
Muhawu, are you going to vote in 2024?
Yes, I will vote.
Are you going to vote in 2024?
Yes, it will be my first time, but yeah, I'm willing to vote, and yeah, I've decided already.
You seemed to not be sure if you wanted to vote or not, Tabani.
Yes. Kuyabona abantu abasiphethe la, yes, siphatha abanye abantu. And uzofuna ukufaka abanye singazi ukuthi abanye basilithelini, yabo. Zokuthi kuyafana, badla imali zethu, lezi zinto lezo, yabo. Yeah, so manje thina kusezoya ngathi ukuthi sazenzela izinto zethu nabo yokuvota hayi soyibona.
Well, Blaine, you have heard that the challenges that the youth is having is that they're struggling to make the ends meet. They're struggling to be independent from their parents. They are not able to do basic things like buying data so that they can apply for jobs. They're not able to do basic things to buy bread in their homes. So they are saying they're not the other ones are saying they are really going to vote because they want to bring about change. But the others are saying they don't really see a reason why they should be voting, because there's no change that happens when they vote, because the leaders, they look after themselves and their families. So we will see what will happen in 2024. But Blaine, that is what is happening on the ground, and the youth, they are really struggling, and we're hoping that at some point that they will see the light at the end of the tunnel. This is it from us in Vosloorus. Thank you so much, Blaine.
Yeah, one of the big takeaways, I guess, Hlela, is that group that you have there, there's little voter apathy, which is a good thing, because you have to be in the game to have a right to complain, right? Exercise the franchise, no matter who you're voting for. Just get some skin in the game, because this is your future. You have to vote. It's your right to vote. And people in 1976, those who struggled, fought hard for giving us this right to vote, right? I wonder, a lady said that they don't have hope, they don't feel inspired. To what extent can the youth of today find inspiration from those in 1976? Let's discuss with the people in the know. We have invited Tulisa Ndlela, National Youth Development Agency board member. Good to have you on the program, sir. Also, our digital audience here with us tonight. We're going to get your take. I see hands up already. We're going to go to you guys in a short while. Thank you very much indeed. Tulisa, first to you. You heard what some of the youth have to say. I say people want to vote. It's a good thing. They want to see change, no matter what political persuasion. We're not getting into that. But the fact that they're, going to vote is a good thing. But you heard their cries. They don't feel inspired. Some don't have hope. What is the root cause of the lack of inspiration?
Yeah, thank you very much, my brother, and good evening to you and to your viewers. Thank you very much for giving us the opportunity. I think just to get straight to the question that you posed, I think South Africa's issues, particularly that face young people, are more structural than anything else, in the sense that the issue of unemployment with young people in South Africa today is reflected in the percentage of self-employed people in the country. Globally, the average is around 44% for countries of the first world, but for emerging economies, 30% of the employed people are self-employed. But for South Africa, we are at around 10%. So you then get a sense of our reliance mostly on the formal economy, and insofar as the employment from direct, either the public sector or the private sector, without us being entrepreneurial enough. I mean, studies have shown that if we could increase our entrepreneurship and the number of people that are self-employed, you could get to a point where we halve our unemployment. If we could just get to where countries like your Brazil, your Mexico are at a level of 30%. So before we look at all the other issues, we need to start at a structural level of us not being, as a country, entrepreneurial enough.
Right.
And I was very encouraged to hear one of the young people you were talking to saying, as she's studying her diploma, she's considering to look for a job or to start her business after studying. And that's the kind of thinking we've got to get into as young people in order to be part of the solutions to the problems that currently face us today.
Right. Let's bring in our digital audience. Glenda, to you first. From what you heard from Tulisa, how best can we equip our youth of today in going towards that route in terms of skills, entrepreneurial skills, to fill that gap?
Yes. Thank you so much for this opportunity. He raises a very good point about the youth becoming more entrepreneurial in their approach. And I definitely think that what's needed is skills training. In a post-COVID society, life has become increasingly dependent on technology and understanding how to become more literate digitally. So what's needed is for people to understand how exactly to send an email professionally, how to create a LinkedIn profile, how to create connections within the world on a more digital basis so that they increase their outreach as opposed to having it within a limited area. Definitely think that job creation is needed within industries that aren't necessarily prioritized within community settings, such as recycling or commercial farming or those kinds of sectors. And definitely internships are a great way to go about helping the plight of the youth in South Africa.
Right. Dr. J.M. Molomo, do you agree, disagree?
Good evening to the viewers, and happy Father's Day to active parents, fathers that are out there. The issue, I think we have to understand the source. Why do we have unemployment? at the source, we have to look at our basic education. As much as we want to, give people our skills and entrepreneurship, it has to start with basic education. To date, the youth of South Africa, we don't want to discuss the issue of 30% pass rate in basic education. I mean, like, how do you expect a child to move from a grade to the other, lacking 70% of the knowledge? Such learner won't be able to be independent enough to understand that we cannot only depend on government. Government alone won't be able to assist us. So for that reason, I think as South African youth, we have to look back to the youth of 1976 and ask ourselves a question. We have to fight against the demon of laziness. To date, our people, our young people, they spend so much time on social media. And if I have to be honest with you, to date, we are not using social media productively. So you look at China, they use TikTok for education. In South Africa, 90% of our people, they use TikTok, fun, jokes around. So we need to be serious, because as much as we are youth today, tomorrow will be parents, will be grandparents.
Right.
What are we going to tell our young generation in the future? So I think it's very, very, very vital. It's very, very important that as South Africans, we come together. It's high time. The economy is bad. It's high time that now we come together as Black people and make sure that we fight against unemployment. There is a lot of black young people that have made progress, that are doing so well. I have someone that I know, Emmanuel Matuba, who is someone that was working as a salesperson. He resigned. With 9,000, he started buying sheep. And now as we speak, one of his animals, most of his animals are being sold in Zambia, are being sold across Africa. So I think it's very important that we must think out of the box. It's not only government that is going to assist us. We need to fight. We need to come together, and we need to stop this thing of using social media for fun. Let's use social media productively. So let's use social media to bring ideas that are constructive. I think it's high time that we forget about making fun of social media. Now let's fight together the unemployment. And the unemployment, it can be fought only if the youth of this day comes together and bring ideas that are constructive.
All right, Doc, thank you very much indeed. Lehlo Honolo, do you agree with the good doctor in terms of the usage of social media for the right purposes?
Hello, thank you so much for this opportunity. And yes, I would say that I do agree with him. A lot of the time in terms of social media, that's how we gain our information. That's how the BLM movement gained so much traction. Is that on TikTok, so many people were willing to speak about it. So many people. Oops, did we lose him? All right, we'll try to come back as soon as his line clears up. Okay, go ahead. Go ahead. I think we've got you back. Okay. Sorry, my Wi-Fi is a bit shaky. So it's also like earlier this year, VIT had a protest, right? It didn't gain as much media coverage as it should have, because these are the same issues that students have been speaking about for years, about finances not being met, accommodation not being okay. And this is obviously slowing students from being able to go into these institutions, get the required skills, and be able to, get a job. So many students are lacking skills that jobs want. So there's like a gap between what we know as the youth and what jobs require from us. And that is a big problem. Yeah. And Hlakanipho, providing a hand up instead of a hand out, how do you understand that?
All right, good afternoon. Good evening, everyone. And I think this is precisely where our government is failing young people, because instead of giving young people the types of tools that they need to better their lives, what government does is give food parcels, provide SASSA grants, and provide 350 Rand grants without actually facilitating making these provisions the types of provisions that can actually change lives. We spoke earlier about entrepreneurship, and a lot of our focus on entrepreneurship focuses on young people who already have business ideas. But what about those young people who don't have business ideas but need to be guided, need to be told about which industries they need to be focusing on? And the way I understand giving a hand up and not giving a hand out is that it works on facilitating the type of growth that means you can make a sustainable change, right? Right now, some of the programs focusing on youth development, specifically geared towards youth unemployment, focus on giving young people internships, right? But what happens after that year? What happens after that 6 months? Where do these young people go? Where do they become productive members of society? And those are the that are not being answered with enough passion for young people to have the kind of hope and vigor in our country that makes you excited to get up every day because you know you are living in a country that gives you a wealth of opportunities.
Yeah. I'm going to talk to Mr. Ndlela shortly with regards to some of the programs that the NYDA have currently in place in order to talk to exactly what you're talking about in Hlakanipho. Let's hear from Ngaba. If you can unmute, Ngaba. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you very much for the opportunity. Firstly, I'd say us as young people, as with somehow we have to also take accountability because we have allowed this to go on for a long time. We have been complaining about these issues all the time. Each and every time we complain about these issues. And also, when they talk about young people now, they only focus on young people when it's the Youth Month. That's when we are going to discuss the issues. But these are the issues that we face on a daily basis. Also, on the issue of the education system that we have in this country, it's a problem as well. It's the problem that we have because it starts there. Right. We are in this problem that we are in now is because of the education system that we have. Also, because now we have ditched the technical side of things. We are only focusing on the theoretical side of things. We're not focusing on the technical skills that the country needs.
Yeah. I hear you. Ngaba, thank you very much indeed. Let's hear from Tuma, and then we'll go to Mbasa. Tuma, to you first.
No, thank you, Mr. Blaine. I have to concur with the good doctor and my colleague Ngaba over there. The problem starts at the educational level. The 30% pass rate that Udok raised and the fact that only 58% of people aged 20 to 24 actually hold a matric. Right. So that is where the problem starts. The second thing is that there's a skills gap crisis in South Africa. So the kind of education that is being taught to the youth does not speak to what is required in the field and in industry. So that gap has to be closed. I think the other thing that stood out for me was the first respondent on the ground there, that the gentleman there said that he was not able to further his studies due to funding. Yeah. So this speaks to the fact that we need to democratize education and open it up to the masses through things like free Wi-Fi and zero rating educational sites. And also creating jobs that are geared for the fourth industrial revolution, because it's no good teaching youth skills where they are already saturated in the market. They are not needed. Right. There's too many people who have those skills already.
Thank you very much indeed, Kuma. Mbasa, do you agree with regards to, look, there's a heavy focus now on early childhood development, basic education, etc. The current curriculum being taught in our schools, does it talk to the skills demands that are needed currently in South Africa? What do you reckon, Mbasa?
Okay, thank you very much, Blaine. Well, firstly, I must say that there's definitely a huge gap between colleges, universities, industry bodies, and employers. So I think what is needed is that there needs to be a kind of a partnership, a kind of communication between universities, industry associations, as well as employers. However, I do believe that there's still quite a huge role that can be played by the government through a way of leading economic development, of course, in partnership with the private sector and with labor.
Let's bring in Mbulaheni. Mbulaheni, let's hear from you before we go back to our guest.
Thanks very much for your time. So I actually agree with all the speakers that indeed there is a gap, which is a mismatch of skills between the higher institution as well as the need for the labor market. So I believe that when you talk about youth unemployment, we need to acknowledge the educational sectors, because we need to restructure our curriculum based, that South Africa was one of the countries that actually was faced by COVID-19.
Yeah.
So I think our curriculum should actually acknowledge the entrepreneurship from the younger age, and also actually align it with our current needs.
Right. I want to talk about solutions, Mr. Ndlela. I understand that the NYDA has a grant program, right? And it talks to young entrepreneurs with access to both financial and non-financial business development support. Does it talk to what our digital audience is saying about the right, curriculum in schools, but eventually supporting those who have those skills to further develop in these careers?
Yeah, I think part of the mandate of the NYDA is that we are as an agency supposed to play an advocacy role insofar as influencing youth development from a policy level. So we engage quite extensively with the departments, in particular basic education. And, maybe I just want to also go back a little bit and correct some of the misconceptions that are there around the basic education policy.
Go on.
At the moment, the basic education law amendments bill is now up for public consultation, and we have always encouraged young people to interact with that bill in order for us to raise some of the issues we believe are a problem, such as the so-called 30%. And this so-called 30%, the truth is, in the 3 tiers of competence, which is your bachelor pass, your diploma pass, and your senior certificate pass, you are expected to pass out of 7 subjects. You are expected to pass 6 out of 7 subjects.
Yeah.
And the minimum of the 7th subject that you can fail is a 30%. So if it happens that a person passes 6 subjects and gets 12% on the 7th subject, based on this rule, you are not allowed to progress. Now, I know in this country, tweets sometimes are further, they travel further than the actual reality.
Yeah.
And the truth is, there is no such a thing called a 30% policy. And if you just go, and I'm sure young people can fact check this, if you just go now online and just check, there's no such a thing. But we really believe and we hold it as if it's there, and we miss the opportunity to then engage even in other things that need to be changed in the basic basic laws of basic education. And I agree with my colleagues that say there is a skills match in terms of now the future of work is now in IT and in skills that are related to the 4th industrial revolution. Let me make an example. One of the biggest restaurants, I'm not going to mention names, has now phased in a machine where you come in and you are able to order and place your order on the machine before you even go and collect your food. Now, the skill there, it means the demand now is no longer on the waiter or the waitress. It's now going to be on the person at the back end providing technical and IT support to the software and making sure that even the hardware is built by people. So that kind of skill and that kind of skilling is what we're encouraging young people to be able to, when they are choosing their subject, to gravitate towards those kind of skills and also towards agriculture, because we believe that agriculture, it doesn't matter how much the world changes, the need for people to eat will remain the same. That's why when we go to this career guidance, we encourage young people to go towards IT skills and also towards agriculture.
All right. I've got about 2 minutes left, but I want to get to Vuyo. Vuyo, with regard, how much is it a change of mindset from maybe our parents as well in order to push us in that direction in terms of those skills? Where do you see the issue?
Well, I think we find ourselves in a very difficult position because I mean, in this day and age, you know, we have a 65% of the population of the youth that find themselves having mental health issues that are undiagnosed. And these are issues that have been raised by the United Nations Children Fund of South Africa. And also, just to add on, you know, we're living in a globalized society and in a globalized community. And each and every single day, you know, there is an increasing population globally. So I think that with the amount of food that is needed in the globe, and the demand that is needed in South Africa, the demand that is needed globally, South Africa has an opportunity, especially the youth, to take advantage of that opportunity and, you know, get into the skills of agriculture and try and find an alternative way of producing food, you know, such as things as aquaponics, hydroponics, and those are things that ought to be touched on by the government. Those are skills that ought to be taught not only at a primary level or at a secondary level, but at a tertiary level as well. You know, that's the type of mindset that we need at this point in time. And I think that, you know, if we can traverse in that trajectory, then perhaps some of the problems that we're facing as a country might be resolved. But if not, and we're going to have that same conservative mindset, then we're going to find ourselves in the back burner, unfortunately.
Unfortunately, and it's unfortunate that we have to wrap up this conversation. I'm so sorry that I didn't get to you, Liliso, as well as Ndani, but we'll try to bring you back as part of Digital Audience in our next programs. Thank you very much indeed. Value added as well. Tulisa Ndlela, National Youth Development Agency Board Member, appreciate your expertise on the matter. Thank you very much indeed, one and all. All right, before we go, here's my take. How do we break the cycle of poverty? Education and dedication, right? But that's only part of the equation. There's something missing at the other end of the equal sign. Education plus dedication must equal employment at the very least, which means both government and the private sector need to provide a conducive environment for this to happen. Both are important enabling role players. And you know who else is an important enabling role player? Your father. Happy Father's Day to all of you, all those who have dedicated their lives to the well-being of their children, whether it's your biological child or not, to those who remain steadfast and resilient in moments of despair, to those who lead by example, not advice, to those who won't let perfection be the enemy of progress, who keep on trying to be there for their children, despite the raft of challenges and obstacles that make it difficult to be a father, to be a dad. Thank you, and God bless. If you missed anything on this program, be sure to watch it on our YouTube channel. Sports Live is up next. If you're watching this a repeat of this program, then as always, the news continues. Until next week, take care. Bye-bye.